Hey, everybody. Great to see you this wonderful Monday early evening here in New York, 6 o'clock. Unbelievably warm today and sunny and humid. But hey, I got the air conditioners on so I don't turn into a sweaty pig, and it's just awesome to see you. So we got an epic one for you today, guys. We're continuing, of course, on our series on North Dakota today. We are going to be looking today at the curious issue of Reeve Rockman. And of course, every time I say that name, I have to chuckle a little because I think by the end of today's show, we're going to have different feelings about this so-called Reeve Rockman guy. But listen, I don't want to pre-prejudice anybody. But anyway, we have an epic show. And of course, we have an epic guest, which we'll get into in a minute. Just real quick, I just want to say that I got a small little announcement for those of you who are fans of the show. I just put it on my Twitter. I'm back making walk and talks. Yes, we are back in the walk and talk business. Yay! The first walk and talk is coming out. The first new walk and talk of this new iteration of the series is coming out this weekend. And who's my guest? Well, we're going to be walking around. Well, I'm not going to tell you where we're going to walk around. It's all going to be a secret. But I got the great Mike Lorenzo coming back. Mike Lorenzo, you all know, the wonderful veteran, hard-nosed detective from Yonkers who was so helpful to us in our last iteration of the video series with his Lorenzo documents and, of course, analyzing the Harvey Carr shooting. And those were classic and legendary videos, which will all be going back up on my site fairly soon. Again, I'm recurating the series back into existence, and I want to put it up in a way that makes sense narratively. I just felt like my previous video series was all over the place because I started out as a Maury Terry fan, and then I ended up as his biggest critic. And I just think that if people watched those old videos without any context, they would come away with, feeling confused, quite frankly. So I've already figured out how I'm going to bring the old videos back. Most of them are not going to come back in full. What I'm going to do is a series of mini pseudo documentaries on the video series itself, and we'll be seeing clips from old videos. Some of the more important videos are going back up: Mr. E, Burn, Undermeyer Park stuff. But a lot of the earlier videos are going to just be collated into a documentary style, retrospective of our amazing series. Listen, if you were there for the last year, you know what we're talking about. You know the feeling that we all had. You know the excitement that we all got every week with new discoveries. And of course, nobody's done this before with Son of Sam. We are almost at a year doing a weekly show. So that's 52 shows, all original, using original sourced research on Son of Sam. So, and we're not stopping. Although we have slowed down because I'm no longer doing this for a living, we are not stopping. New walk and talks are coming. New documentaries are coming. We're analyzing. And of course, we're nowhere near done with this North Dakota stuff. So a lot of exciting things happening, guys. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. It's going to be amazing. So listen, we have a lot to do tonight. Tonight is going to be an information and action-packed show today. Maybe you're sitting there wondering, hey, why does Manny have so much energy today? Well, I'll tell you, not only am I feeling good about the video series and where we're at and our conclusions, but today while gardening, I noticed, those of you who've been in my gardening classes, I noticed that the Amelanchier tree were in fruit, the shad bush. So today while gardening, I feasted on fresh fruit directly from the tree, live enzymes, living vitamins, totally vital food. And I said, screw you, birds. You're not getting these. I'm a human being. I deserve these too. So I feasted on Amelanchier berries today. And I got to tell you, eating food from a tree rocks. Okay. I mean, seriously, it gives you energy. It fills you with life. And I think I'm going to do it I'm going to try to do it every Monday. Unfortunately, by next week, that tree will probably be bare. But in either case, we got a lot to do today, and I'm feeling good. So let me introduce the man of the hour, who has agreed to be my acting partner in today's show, and also, of course, has a million amazing insights into these documents that, I think deserve to be heard. So, hey, without further ado, let's bring in the man of the hour. So, you all know him and you all love him. May I introduce for you the one, the whoops only Eric Galati. How you doing? I accidentally pressed the wrong
I'm
button there.
doing fine, doing fine. It's these documents. I don't know why. I've gone through crime in and out for years, even with Scotland Yard in England when I came across something. But these documents are eerie. But I want to say one thing because of the success of your investigation. This true crime is another, shall we say, iteration, another
Correct.
chapter in your investigation, which I'll give the general title On the Trail of the Son of Sam. I think that's a good title for all of it together. You began with True Crime File, The Son of Sam Cult on your own. You were a guest on Crowdsource the Truth, hosted by Jason Goodman, and became, thanks to him, a co-show co-host. It was Crowdsource the Truth, Jason Goodman, Manny Goodman.
Grossman.
Grossman, sorry, Manny Grossman.
That's all right.
And then you continued that, and then it was Manny Monday. Then Manny Monday took on a broader perspective when you started Real Time True Crime, and Manny Monday was a show of that. And for those of us on Locals, Real Time True Crime Community.
Correct.
You had your unfortunate breakdown almost. You gathered yourself together, and it made you realize that now it has to be true crime.
Correct.
And not hypothetical true crime, conspiracy theorist true crime. We're looking for facts. And what happens by serendipity is that these documents that go back, they are registered at the Queens County District Attorney's Office, October 26, 1979. That's 2 years and 2 months after David Berkowitz is apprehended, correct?
Correct.
Now, I want to state something that seems trivial, except for the history of these documents. I'll be quick, then we'll put our play on. With these documents that you never knew of, and most of us never knew of, and people will say, well, that's what happens. Documents are discovered. But there's something very odd. A has these documents. I'm not naming people, and I'm not accusing, but it's very strange. A has these documents.
Now, when you say A is a person. So A.
Person. Yeah, okay. Each person will have a letter. A gives these documents to B. B informs you of these documents. You're totally elated.
Then this was months ago, by the way.
Yeah, but B says to you, and I did not know this had taken place till things got bad, but you're not to have them.
Correct. B got them from A. A instructed B not to give them to me, and B, in an unbelievable show of disloyalty, in my opinion, showing me that B was not really working on our team as a team player. B agreed to keep these from me. B agreed to hold these documents back from me repeatedly.
But no, it doesn't make sense, and I'm going to tell you why this is very weird for me. Because I had a psychic experience at night, and I never speak about these things, and I don't tap into them. So C comes along. C is a person like a number of us who's friends with everyone. And C gives you the documents. You give the documents to me. I ask a very dear person involved in this, would you, in fact, I said to you, you said these documents are public. So I said, can I...
Right, I've been accused of stealing these documents. Publicly, I've been accused of stealing these documents.
They were given to you by C.
Correct.
Okay, C.
Who got them from... Well, you'll right.
Got them from B. So you didn't steal any of these documents. The ones we're dealing with now about Michael Armienti, and the ones we'll deal with way on ahead about Falcon or Falcone's Nest and the interviews there. So C gives you these documents, and you said these should be public. They're not supposed to be private.
This is what got me back in the game.
Yeah, so I said, hey, can I give them to, now this person can be named, this is not a secret, because can I give them to Gwendoline Kubanes? And you said sure, these are public, they shouldn't be hidden.
Of
She
course.
didn't know of them. I sent her the files, she was very grateful. Now I asked another person, would you like them? And this person D, said, I already have them. I got them from a Facebook Son of Sam site called Maury Terry. I learned that this is now called the official Maury Terry site. When
Facebook
they were,
page.
yeah, when they were put up, I don't know. Now, everybody would say, but this happens often, this and that, except for the betrayal of saying you stole them and you never stole them. And also the fact that documents sometimes appear and don't get into everybody's hands. But there's something weird. There's something very weird, because you're going to have to say the two things you thought I did, which were brilliant. It's not me. And I'm not saying brilliant, but there's something else that came to my mind. When were these documents first released or made public in after October 26, 1979? Because this was really like a secret investigation.
Right. I don't know where these came from. I don't know how A got these.
Yeah, and who gave them to whomever, and how were they given? Because you see, somebody might say, were they given to Maury Terry? Well, I don't believe. What type of an investigator says, hey, you, let's say I'm investigating you. I'm the investigator. Hey, I've been investigating you. I've got a file here. Look at the research I did on you. That's insane. Nobody
Right.
who investigates gives that, because Terry ends up being investigated within these documents also.
I think Chinati and I think that the
Maybe,
subtext here is that Chinati and Terry were being investigated by Queens DA. I think
yeah.
that's the subtext here.
Now, if they were given to him before, I would say it was not for jurisprudential reasons, criminological, but almost political, as a threat. He never mentions Michael. That's what came to my mind. He never mentions Michael Armienti in The Ultimate Evil, right?
I don't believe so. No.
No, and it's called An Investigation of America's Most Dangerous Satanic Cult, with new evidence linking Charles Manson, Son of Sam, the Son of Sam murders, and beyond. That's a full title.
Right.
Now, a man who comes out with so much like that, you would say, well, why doesn't he mention it? He talks about being loyal to Hank and going to the trial. He talks about other things, right? Why doesn't he mention it? If he knew of it, I think it might have been a threat against him, but I don't think he was ever given these documents.
Well, that's that's a very interesting point, because it raises a lot of potential questions. But my thing is, if he did have these documents, then he's absolutely guilty of journalistic malpractice. Because the as we're going to see today, the conclusions that he wrote in black and white in his book are, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong. I mean, that's why we're going to be reading this together. You guys, in the description of the oh no, I'm going to put up a link. Hopefully someone will get it to me, where you can get these documents yourself and read them along with us. These are damning documents from Maury Terry's thesis.
Yeah, I mean, they're damning, but there's an eeriness because of the questions about Chinotti. There's something very strange. Yonkers detective Jim Fay, also in the last.
He's not a Yonkers detective.
Oh, New York.
He was Port Authority Police. He worked for the Bronx DA's office, and he worked for a fire department in New York.
Oh, okay, very good. He also said, gee, this, he was alluding to how strange they didn't send a detective. This was just a certified legal investigator.
So Dave Moth says Armienti is mentioned a few times in The Ultimate Evil. So I just want to be
Yes.
accurate. I don't remember it, but listen, Dave is a friend of the show, and
yeah, well, maybe he's mentioned in the second edition, because as I told you, I'm not ashamed to say I might have overlooked it because this bloody book doesn't have an index.
Correct.
I'll say it again.
That's a big problem, but I don't think that that's a major point, really.
I just feel something eerie about this whole thing, because I still believe that Terry wasn't investigating Son of Sam when he went to North Dakota. That's for now. We could find something completely different. But I think he was on to a different criminal activity.
No. I think he was investigating Son of Sam and didn't realize he was investigating
That's
another.
right. That's
Right,
right.
because
But,
you said you're right.
by default, he was channeling into a different criminal
Totally different.
organization between New York and North Dakota, specifically Yonkers and Minot.
I I have come up with a new name for Maury Terry. And it's actually complimentary. People might actually be shocked, but I'm calling him the accidental genius because in his stumbling of the Son of Sam crimes and in my opinion getting it completely wrong, he accidentally stumbled into potentially 3 or 4 other criminal conspiracies: the trafficking up to Untermeyer Park from Times Square, the satanic rituals in Untermeyer Park, which might have ensnared Eton Pates, which of course had nothing to do with Son of Sam, in my opinion, the drug pipeline to North Dakota and Yonkers. I think that those 3 things, of course, are incredibly important criminal conspiracies to deal with, but he conflated them to Son of Sam,
Mhm.
whereas I'm separating them all out. That's the huge difference in methodology between me and Maury Terry.
Mhm. And before we start, Dave Morth, if you could come up with a page or two for me, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, please. So I just want to say one thing to add to that. I just want to say how really disgusted I am at the mainstream of the Son of Sam community. I mean, I don't really need you guys really at all. I don't particularly want to be fighting with you guys. But you kept these documents from us, which means that you kept them from the world. Because quite frankly, there's 100 people on the Facebook site, and nobody gives a shit about it. Nobody cares. Okay, the people are watching me, whether you like it or not. I have the numbers, and that's going to continue. It's very unlikely someone else is going to come along with the same credibility. So by keeping these documents from me, right, and instructing people to keep them from me, not only was that setting up the last video series to be sabotaged, which it actually ended up being sabotaged because wedges were drawn between people, but you actually became enemies of Son of Sam Truth. Now I know why you wanted to keep these from me, because these are damning documents against Maury Terry, and you didn't want me to expose them. But hey, here we are. I got them, and I'm exposing them. So, I know that I'm never going to get other stuff again if anything else comes out. But at this point, I think we actually have enough material to come up with conclusions on Son of Sam, and I am actually going forging ahead with that in a new series of documentary walk and talks, where I integrate the Neto information into these new North Dakota information. And boy, you guys are gonna absolutely love the work that I'm doing. And it's all solo. I don't have a team, in the sense that I don't have some investigative partner and people who are really working against my best interest, truth be told. And the vibe is going to be amazing. We're going to have a great time, guys. So anyway, listen, Eric, before we begin, is there anything that you want to add?
I want to thank Dave Moth for telling me of page 325. I don't have the paperback. I'll look it up later. In the very first edition, they say I was the first person to buy the book at Doubleday when it came out. And I have the second edition, which I've never looked at. I'll go to that page. Yeah, the other thing I want to say, I've been involved not often, in some pretty eerie things, and even had my life threatened. And Hank, even when I came back to New York, was concerned for me. But there's something, me alone, and I don't play with my mind. There's something eerie about Queens County here and going out to investigate this. I actually, what came to my mind was Queeg, the man from a fictional island in Herman Melville's Moby Dick or the Whale, where he's doing his fortune telling on the ship as they go after the white whale. And he calls over Ishmael and he says, "Bring the carpenter." And he says, "Make this coffin," because he feels imminent death. That's the feeling I had at night about myself with this. There's something maybe it's my past experience, my psyche playing with me. I don't play with the supernatural and the extrasensorial, but there's something very eerie about this whole thing. Also, people when you get these documents, there's a defect. They're not complete. At the end of page 53, it goes back to 49, ends on 53, and we don't have the remaining inquiry.
Right, exactly. And hey, the Maury Terry people are going to argue, well, that's where all the great information is and the stuff that's not there. Well, all right. All right, Eric. Well, listen, great intro. I really appreciate
your great intro, and your iterations will continue. And also, I'm not only doing Thomas, I'm doing.
We're going to get to that. We got a little ways to go before we get to the play.
Okay.
So, all right. So let's carry on. So today, guys, we are doing North Dakota, part 2. Reeve Rockman. We're dealing with Reeve Rockman today. Okay. So I just want to reiterate again that, and I did this last week, so we're not going to spend much time on this, but I really believe that these documents are the missing link, the things that we needed as Son of Sam researchers to absolutely start to crystallize and focus these crimes for us. And listen, I've analyzed the hell out of both these documents, but we haven't done it up privately, right? I've done it privately, but we have not done it publicly. As we go along, I think you're gonna realize and see why these are missing link documents and why they're so important. But these documents are absolutely 100% the most important things I've ever seen in Son of Sam, way beyond anything in the Ultimate Evil, even way beyond the 57 pages that we got from Berkowitz's apartment. Because again, those letters, while I think that they're written by a deluded mind who was hell-bent on terrorism and destruction, some people can say, well, he wrote them as fakes and he backdated them, and we'll never really know, because I'm not waiting around for Berkowitz to give me the time of day. I mean, F that guy. He's a serial killer. And even if we do talk to him, is he going to tell us the truth? Well, I mean, look at what he did to Carl, right? Look how he trolled Carl. So I think that these are hugely important, again, because this information was used as major corroboration for Maury Terry and the Ultimate Evil. He drew so many conclusions based on his North Dakota work regarding John Carr and David Berkowitz. So that's one reason these are incredibly important, right? He used the information to corroborate that John Carr knew David Berkowitz. Now, we already know that David Berkowitz knew John Carr. He knew him in his own deluded mind as John Wheat from the phone book, right? Because that's how he wrote that name first. He didn't write it as Wheaties. He wrote it as Wheat, meaning that he got the name from the phone book and started perseverating and fixating on it. So he knew John Carr in his own deluded mind. But the question is, did John Carr know David Berkowitz? And of course, the North Dakota information was used to corroborate that John Carr drew the Son of Sam symbol. Now, we dealt with that last week, and in my opinion, threw that in the dustbin of history. There's no way, in my opinion, that after reading these documents, that anybody can come out of them absolutely 100% sure that John Carr drew the Son of Sam symbol. There's so much contradictory evidence. It's unbelievable. These North Dakota documents, and this is what we're going to deal with today, were used to corroborate that, quote, Reeve Rockman, who is known as Steve in these documents that we're going to read today, was in North Dakota, was involved with John Carr, and was trying to kill him. The North Dakota information was also used to corroborate that Wheat Carr was implicated in Son of Sam, and we'll deal with that on a separate show. It was used to corroborate that John Carr was a shooter in Son of Sam, or at least had a tendency to be a shooter. We'll deal with that probably on today's show. And of course, these documents, as Eric said, provide interesting insight into the role of Maury Terry, the North Dakota police, Hank Chinotti, and the Queens District Attorney. Remember, stories within stories. There's going to be nobody else on earth other than me and my team that would ever be able to even parse out the subtleties in these documents. And you know why I know that? Because I have Maury Terry people writing comments on my site saying, well, didn't you read that it says it's the same symbol, man? It says it's the same symbol. It's right there. Guys, reading comprehension skills. So let's deal with Reeve Rockman, or Steve. So first things first, we have to, and Eric, I'm sorry for this relatively long introduction.
No, I don't take an hour. I don't mind.
Thank you, sir. So listen, in order to build a house, you have to build the foundation. And I like building strong houses. I like building fortresses, in fact. And my fortresses are built on foundations made of concrete, not of sand. Okay. So one of the things that we're going to do to build the foundation for my argument today is, well, use Maury Terry's book. Okay, because that's what we have to compare it to. That's what everybody believes. Well, not me and my fans. Okay, but this is what the mainstream believes, that Maury Terry somehow was correct. The process comes into Untermeyer Park. Billy the artist sketches them in the middle of the night with no lights around them. Mr. Real Estate is in Untermeyer. I mean, give me a break. Okay, the real world doesn't work that way. So we're gonna look at what Maury Terry wrote about Reeve Rockman, his very bold pronouncements that made you think a certain way about Son of Sam. Selective editing Mo. And then there was Reeve Rockman, the other subject of the trip. His photo was identified. Okay, that's pretty unequivocal. His photo was identified by Taylor Christensen and Leslie Shago. Now Taylor and Christensen are Tom and Darlene, who pointed out when he was here, he was also about 20 pounds lighter than in the picture. Shago also said that Rockman had something wrong with one of his hands, as did Taylor and Falcon. Okay, that's another very, very unequivocal statement. These observations were accurate. Okay, I don't know how Maury Terry knew that, but okay. Give me a second here. Rockman, a mystery figure and stranger to Carr's friends in North Dakota, was observed at the Falcon's Nest and at a party in Minot in mid-October 76. We're going to deal with that today in great detail. Okay, remember this. He was observed. This says here that he was definitely, unequivocally, absolutely 100% observed at a party in Minot in mid-October 76, shortly after Carr left the Air Force and was hospitalized with a drug overdose after telling Geetson and Knoop about his urine drinking at a satanic ritual. We'll deal with that one as well. That one's not so cut and dry either. The Minot resident said Rockman was introduced as Reeve, John's friend from New York. Now, that's a lie, although because he was introduced as Steve. But I guess Maury Terry, okay, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt here. He had to put a pseudonym in here, Reeve, which is actually very confusing once we get to the end of today's show, and I'm going to deal with my problem with that pseudonym. Okay, well, we'll deal with that later. They said they understood that Rockman was involved in drug dealings with Carr in New York. Oh, really? We're gonna examine that today. Taylor and Christensen said Carr carried a photo of Rockman. Very unequivocal statement there. He carried a photo of Rockman, apparently a newspaper clipping, in his wallet and told them, "This is the guy that wants to kill me." That statement was essentially the same one made earlier by Craig O'Connor. John burned the picture right there in the sink, Taylor said. Selective editing Mo. So this is from Carl Denaro's book, okay? Now, Carl Denaro's book is essentially a cut and paste of The Ultimate Evil with a couple of, well, huge mistakes thrown in there as well. Particularly Alfonso Carrozza. He calls him Wicked King Wicker, which we debunked. He talks about Mr. Real Estate. There's no Mr. Real Estate. He talks about Scout, which we debunked. He talks about Taco Grady, which we debunked last year. So you can't really take the words from Carl Denaro's book very seriously. But here's what he writes about Reeve Rockman. Although it was not known if he was actually at any of the attacks, it is known that he lived in Queens, was good friends with John Carr, and visited Carr several times in North Dakota. Several of John Carr's friends, including his girlfriend, said that Reeve Rockman and John Carr dealt drugs in New York. Two of Carr's North Dakota friends, these are the two that we're going to act out today, said that Carr carried a photo of Reeve Rockman in his wallet and told them, "This is the guy that wants to kill me." Oh, yeah? All right. Well, we're going to examine that. Maybe this is going to be another thing from Carl's book that we're going to debunk. And finally, last 2 pages here. Okay. This is how Maury Terry found out about Reeve Rockman. In late August 79, my conversation continued with Jeff Nees, Gardner, and Knoop. Those were the cops and the people out in North Dakota. One night, while Nees was listened in on an extension in the sheriff department, I asked Gardner for the names of the people he learned were associated with John Carr. The deputy reached into a file and went down a list of names, most of whom were from North Dakota. Then came another name. This guy's supposed to be from New York. Okay, that's of interest. Who's in it? It's the guy named Reeve Rockman. Reeve Rockman? Yeah, we don't have much of this dude. Just that he was out here with Carr just after John got the boot from a druggy binge. What else? Nothing much. Rockman showed up out here with John and went back to New York. I see. Who the hell is he? I don't know. I thought he was a figment of imagination. Now, this is interesting, and we're going to deal with this later. Gardner chuckled. I talked to Craig O'Connor, who told me that Carr was afraid of a Rockman. I thought he said, quote, rock man. I even put in my notes that way. Carr said a rock man is going to kill him, apparently a musician. Okay, well, that's very interesting. And Rockman, a mystery figure and stranger to Carr's friends, was observed at the Falcon's Nest and at a party in Minot. Okay, we already read this earlier before. All right, so you guys have your baseline here. Give me a second. You guys have your baseline. Our baseline is the following takeaways, which is just basically let me check, which is basically just 3 takeaways. 1, your first takeaway from the foundation we are building here. John Carr positively ID'd Reeve Rockman with the photo in his wallet. That's our first takeaway. From what we just read in The Ultimate Evil, that's my takeaway. And when I was a fan of The Ultimate Evil several years ago, when I knew every page almost by heart, because I read it about 300 to 500 times over the period of about 30 years, okay, I thought Reeve Rockman was positively ID'd by John Carr, okay? And I know that you guys did too. You just admit it to yourselves. We all thought that. Reeve Rockman was definitely at a party in North Dakota, as observed by several people. That was what Maury wrote. He wrote it. It's in black and white. And John Carr thought that Reeve Rockman was out to kill him, and the implication was that he burned a picture of Reeve Rockman as some sort of occultic ritual. So we're going to deal with all these things today, but the way that we're going to do it, guys, is we are going to act this out, okay? And we're going to act it out straight. We're not even going to comment on it until later. What we want you to do is just kind of relax, enjoy yourselves, maybe read along with us if you have the documents, and really get a feel for the answers, the questioning, the line of questioning. And also remember, keep in mind the takeaways that we just learned. Definite Reeve Rockman, definite at the party, definite that he carried his picture, definite that it was a rock man. Okay, so it was a musician. Okay. So Eric is going to play the roles of Tom and Darlene together, and I am going to be Michael Armienti. All right, and we're going to act out. It's going to take a little while. We hope that you guys enjoy it, because actually this is historic, because no one has ever done this before with these documents, and by reading them just straight without any commentary, as we were the people being questioned, it'll give you guys a good feel, in my opinion, for this material. So, and yes, Moet, I've instructed Eric to keep the Southern accent. All right.
Shall we read when there's a redaction? Shall we say redaction?
If I know the name, I'll say it. It's Thomas Taylor and Darlene Christensen. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to be Michael Armienti. My name is Michael Armienti. I'm a CLI with the Homicide and Investigations Bureau at the Queens District Attorney's Office. I am in the kitchen of an apartment located at 525 6th Street, Northeast, Minot, North Dakota. It is October 26, 1979, and the time is approximately 1:15. With me for the purposes of voice identification is
Thomas Taylor.
Can you give your address, please?
Okay. Redacted the address. I was born on July.
Is there an apartment?
4. Apartment 4.
Apartment 4, and that's in Minot, North Dakota?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me your date of birth, please?
July 1st, 1954.
Also present with me is
Darlene. Address. Darlene Christensen. Address redacted. Minot, North Dakota. I was born December 3rd, 1952.
All right, Tom, I understand you want to make a statement as to any possible association you may know of between John Carr and a person whom you learned to be Steve, or any meeting you may have had with Steve. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell me when you first met, under what circumstances you first met Steve?
Well, I was playing with a band. We were trying to get a band together, and we were practicing up at the Falcon's Nest Coffee House. And JC brought him up. That's John Carr.
JC is okay.
Uh, Brought him up, and we were on a break, I think. And he introduced me to him.
How did he introduce him to you?
He just said, "This is a friend of mine." I don't even remember if he used the name Steve or not. It was quite a long time ago. We shook hands, and then I had to go play.
When was this?
This was in the fall of '76, I believe, around that time.
When you shook this person's hand, did you notice any? You shook his right hand.
I shook his right hand.
Did you notice any deformity in his left hand or left arm at this time?
It seemed like he was holding his left arm funny, but it's so long ago that I'm not really sure. It seemed like he was trying to hide his hand or something.
Okay, and what happened after you were introduced?
Him and John went into, I'm not sure if they either went into Phil's office, that's Phil Falcone or Falcon's office at the coffee house, or into the TV lounge room. I'm not sure. I wasn't really paying that much attention to it.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to show you a photograph containing two photos mounted on the same photograph. This is the close-up of an individual, and the other is a snapshot of three persons sitting around the table, one of whom has his arms over his head. I'd like you to look at this photograph and tell me if you see this person who you met with John Carr.
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Who is that person?
I think his name is Steve or something like that.
Can you point him out in the photograph?
He's the close-up on the left.
So the person whose photograph shows is shown here as a close-up. Is this person who you met at that time?
I believe so.
At that first meeting you had with him, you don't recall if his name was mentioned to you?
No, I'm sure it was.
But at this point, do you recall what his name was?
No, I can't remember exactly.
Okay, and again, can you state what happened after you met when you left? Did you see him again?
That night?
That night.
No, I didn't see him again that night. I didn't see JC again that night either.
Did you see where they may have, do you know where they may have gone?
Not really. Probably into Phil's office. But then again, I wasn't really paying much attention to them. I think I was going to get a Coke or something.
And this was in the fall of 1976?
76.
Did there ever come a time when you met Steve again?
I believe so. I saw him over at, well, JC was living with Jeff on, I think it's called Sioux Street. And he wasn't feeling too good.
Who wasn't?
JC wasn't. Because when I went in, Jeff came to the door, and I believe that person was in the house at the time, and
this is the apartment that
Jeff's
was rented by both Jeff.
It was duplex.
And John Carr.
Right. JC was sick. As a matter of fact, Jeff just told me to go back and beat on the door for a while and get him up, and that's what I did.
When? What point in time was this?
It was winter time. It was around January, I think, December, January, something like that.
Of December of 1976?
76.
Or January of 77?
Right.
Okay, and what happened? What happened then?
I went in and talked to JC, and he was feeling pretty bad. He was sick. He had been doing too many drugs, and Jeff was all dressed to go to work. He was working nights.
Do you know what time in the week this was in? Weekday, weekend?
I think it was a weekday. I'm sure it was a weekday. I remember talking to JC, and it must have been pretty late. It must have been around 9 or 10 o'clock when I showed up over there, because it wasn't soon after I showed up that Jeff had to leave to go to work. And when he left, everyone left. So only JC and I were left, and we went out and listened to the stereo for a while.
Everyone else being whom else?
Jeff and a couple of his buddies that he was either getting a ride to work from them or he was giving them a ride to work.
Did you see the same person who John Carr introduced to you at the Falcon's Nest that night?
I believe so.
Under what circumstances did you see him?
I just walked through the living room to go to JC's room, and he was sitting in the corner.
The corner of which room?
Of the living room.
Did you say anything to him?
Not that I can remember. I said hi to everybody, you know.
Did he say anything to you?
I don't think so. He might have said hi back.
And what happened then?
I went inside to talk to JC.
And what did anything happen while you were talking to JC?
Jeff came in and said he was going to leave, and that was about it.
Did Steven, this person Steven, come into the bedroom at that time, at any time while you were there?
I think that Jeff came in and talked to JC, and then JC left the room, and I think that's who he talked to, but I'm not absolutely positive.
You're not positive JC spoke to Steve?
Right.
You didn't see Steven come into the bedroom?
No, he didn't come into the bedroom. He was out in the kitchen.
Okay, you keep on.
Because he was out in the kitchen, because JC's room was past the kitchen. You had to go through the living room and through the kitchen to get to JC's. It was just a little tiny apartment, you know.
What happened after you spoke to JC? What did you do then?
Oh, I went home.
But you have to leave JC's bedroom and once again walk through the living room.
But everyone was gone then. Jeff had to go to work, and everyone was gone when we went out. JC and I went out and sat in the living room and listened to the stereo, and he was talking about he had to get off the drugs and all this because it was fucking him up and everything, you know, and that's about all.
So that this person who you think was the same person you saw at the Falcon's Nest left with Jeff. Did anyone else?
He left the same time that Jeff did. Whether he left with Jeff or not, I don't know, because I didn't see them leave.
Was there anyone else in the house besides Jeff, this individual, John Carr, and yourself?
Yeah. There was a couple of other guys in the Air Force, I believe.
Do you know who they were?
No, I don't.
And they left along with Jeff?
With Jeff.
And this individual who you think was Steve?
See, they were all dressed in their uniforms, ready to go to work, and he was the only guy who wasn't.
Air Force uniforms?
Right.
And Jeff, at this time, was in the Air Force also?
Right, right.
When did you first learn that this person's name was Steve, if at all?
I was questioned by a detective from New York approximately 3 to 4 weeks ago. And it was at that time they asked me if I knew anyone by the name of Steve. And I think they had a couple of more names, 1 or 2. But that was when they showed me the picture.
Who was present with you at that meeting?
Mike Knope. He was the officer for the...
He was the officer for the Minot Police Department.
Minot Police Department. Terry Gardner, who's the lieutenant for the sheriff department. I'm not sure what detective from New York's name was. I remember very vividly he had a big cross on him and a big medallion on and everything.
Did he have any facial features that stand out?
Yeah, it seemed like he had...
Was he clean shaven?
No, he had I don't remember. Those medallions that he wore totally black clothes. That kind of shook me. There was another guy there too.
Was his name Chinati?
Yeah, That's what it was.
Who else was there?
A reporter, investigative reporter, I learned later. Gee, I don't remember.
Terry Murray or Maury Terry?
Yeah, something like that.
Did
And another guy, a younger kid, a younger guy.
and who's he?
I don't know who he was.
Do you remember his name?
No, I don't even remember if I got introduced to him.
How did this reporter introduce himself to you?
Like an asshole. He
It's all right.
That's what we
Uh,
call corpsing. Okay. like, like an like, like an asshole. I'll be honest,
all right, let's get back into character.
he didn't really say too much about himself. He just kind of, every time that detective, I think his name is Mike, every time he'd ask a question, this other guy would shoot another question at me. And he was talking me. He was telling me. I don't know what his plan was. He was saying, what would you do if I told you that I had talked to Berkowitz and Berkowitz mentioned your name and said that he knew you? And I said it was bullshit. And he jumped out of his chair and shit. I thought he's a pretty big dude, And I think Mike stood up. Mike, nope. He's not a midget either. And then, but
that was the first time you were able to associate the name Steven with the photograph they had shown you.
Well, at that time, even I wasn't able to. I guess we had about a week or so to sit around and think about it. A lot of things that came out in that discussion, I registered in my mind as relating to other things that were happening here,
So that's Steven, John Carr, Phil Falcon, Jeff never introduced you to John's person?
He did. John did.
I understand that, but they never introduced you with this person at any point where you can remember the name that was given.
No. I'm really bad at names, though, just like dates. Names and dates are really...
Did there come a time subsequently where you saw this person again, subsequent to the first meeting at the Falcon's Nest, subsequent to this meeting at a party at your visit to John Carr?
Darlene and I were drinking around.
Driving around.
Darlene and I were driving around. And we stopped in at JC's. And I think that's when you slipped on the stairs, honey, outside the front ones.
You just impress yourself to what you remember.
Oh, as far as I remember, there was a bunch of people in there.
Now,
I'm not real sure.
How long after?
It was just a week after I seen him the first time.
The second time or the first time?
The second time.
Okay, this is when you went to visit John Carr?
Mm-hmm.
A week later, you and Darlene were driving around and you went again to his apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. Again, this is during the period of December 76, January 77.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, give me a second here. Okay, please go on.
And I could be mistaken, but I think that guy was there then.
How did you see him?
He was sitting in a chair.
When was the first time you saw him when you arrived at the party?
He was standing. Oh, when I first saw him,
mm-hmm.
Maybe he was in the kitchen. He might have, maybe he was in the kitchen and took off in one of the bedrooms with somebody to do something.
Did you say hello to him again? Did he say hello to you?
No.
Did you speak to him at all?
No.
And what did you do after that?
Well,
After he walked away from you, did he see you there? Did you make eye contact with him at all?
I think so. We must have. I can't remember if him and JC went into the room or just him and Jeff or...
This is the same apartment that's shared by Jeff.
Right. This is Jeff's apartment, right.
Okay, and what happened after that?
We sat down and I partied for a while. I can't remember if I seen him again that night or not. I doubt it.
You didn't see anyone speaking with him?
No, no, not that I can remember.
So you're saying,
A lot of people were getting up and going into the kitchen, and coming back.
so he basically stayed in another room,
Yeah,
away from everybody else.
more or less, yeah.
Do you know if he knew anyone there?
No, I don't.
Do you know if he's a local person?
I don't think he was. If he was, he'd know me.
That's the only thing you base on. You base the fact that he's not a local person on that you would have known him.
Well, see, cause he was hanging around, people that I was hanging around with, or he was there, and if he had been a local person, I'm sure I would have seen him before. I mean, when you go to parties, you see the same people and over and over and over again.
Did you speak to anyone at the party that mentioned his name or they referred to him in any way?
Not that I can remember.
So while you were at the party, you never saw him again?
I don't believe so.
And before you left, you never saw him again? And while you were leaving, you never saw him again? Is that correct?
I believe so.
That was the last time
That I saw him.
that you ever saw him. Did John Carr ever mention him to you?
Well, there was an episode. He was living on 42nd Street.
Who was?
JC, John, Northeast, and I think you were with me, Darlene, or was it Southeast? Whatever. Okay. It was up out there by the, and he was cleaning up some of his stuff because he was moving out. And he wanted me to watch his place. I think he was going to go to New York for Christmas or whatever. And he showed me a newspaper clipping. I believe Darlene was there too. I'm not sure. And he was scared. He showed me a newspaper clipping and he showed me a telephone receipt. And it was saying that this guy was out to get him for something. And he was scared, but he never said any more.
Did you ask him what he meant by that? What did he mean by out to get him? For what reasons did he may be out to get him?
I did. I think I did ask him.
Give me a second here. And what was his response?
He, beat around the bush, wouldn't say nothing.
How would he beat around the bush?
He told me, he said that guy was a narc or something like that. But the picture that you showed me, and what I can recall of the newspaper picture, which was a better one because he had it in an envelope and he had it stuck in his pocket for a while.
John Carr did. John Carr did?
And it was all beat up, but it looks, I can't, I'm not sure, but I'd almost say that was the same guy.
What was this was a newspaper, a photo from a newspaper?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a clipping anywhere around this photo?
Yeah, there was. He had the story with it and all.
What did the story say?
I don't remember. I thought it was something about a bust or something.
What kind of a bust?
A drug bust, but I could be wrong.
Where did the article from which paper did it originate from?
I keep thinking the Grand Forks or something like that, but
Grand Forks, North Dakota?
Right. I keep thinking that, but I could be wrong. But the oddest thing about it was, after we left his house, we were in his van, and I don't remember how far we had driven, not too far, and 3 cars come whizzing, going to the opposite direction towards his house. But we were going west and they were going east. And there were 2 marked, looked like state highway patrol cars or something like that. And they weren't city police. And one unmarked car in the middle. And John just freaked out. I mean, freaked out.
What do you mean by freaked out? What did he do?
He lost his shit.
What do you mean by he lost his shit?
He uh he just started shaking and talking real loud, and
What was he saying?
he's pointing to that car and he says, "There's the guy." He said, "That's the guy right there." So we waited, and they took a turn that turned into his down his road, and we waited a little while, and then John turned around and went back, and there wasn't anyone there. I don't believe, but it was awful strange that they did make that turn.
Okay, these three cars, they were marked.
Two were marked.
Two were marked police cars?
Two, one in front and one behind. The one in the middle was unmarked.
Was unmarked. Did he indicate who was the guy that he claimed?
He told me.
Was it the same person?
He told me that it was the guy who was in the picture.
Was he the driver?
I think yes.
The driver of which car?
The one in the middle.
The marked car, the unmarked car in the middle?
Right.
Was there anyone else with him in the unmarked car?
I didn't see anyone, no.
Did you notice the license plate? Was it from North Dakota?
No, they whizzed by. They were going.
Did they have the lights on?
No.
And where was the position of the car that the three of you were in?
The van, it's only a 2-lane highway, you know, and we were on the in the right lane going west,
You were going west,
and they were coming east.
and they were coming west.
East.
They were coming east, rather, at a very fast rate of speed.
Yeah,
And he was able to recognize the driver as the person he claims was after him.
it was. It was pretty well lit out there. You'll have to go out there at night and you'll understand what I mean. It's quite well lit. The road its fairgrounds are right there and everything, you know, and it's pretty well lit up.
Where did this take place? In Minot?
In Minot.
Okay. What did John Carr do after that? You said he started shaking and it is now approximately 1:40. This is side 2 of the statement given by Thomas Taylor in regards to the John Carr incident. Before we were cut off, Tom, so the tape must have ended here, guys, okay? And they've started a new tape. Before we were cut off, Tom, I was asking you, and I'd like to ask you again. 3 cars were heading towards an easterly direction. 2 of them marked cars. The one in the center was an unmarked car. You, Darlene, and John Carr were driving in a westerly direction in a van. Soon after he showed you the picture of an individual who he claimed was after him, he screamed out, "That's the same person driving that car. Driving the car in the center, the unmarked police car, was the same individual?"
Yes.
Okay, what happened at that point? What did John Carr do after he said that's the same guy? How did that come about?
He pulled over to the side of the road. He checked his pistol under the seat to make sure it was still there.
What kind of pistol was it?
It was a 22 caliber automatic, a Ruger, maybe.
What did he say? Did he say anything before he pulled it out?
He says, "That's the guy." He says, "That's the one. There's the guy right there, you know," or something to that effect, you know. He had burnt that picture after he showed it to us.
He burned the picture?
He burnt the picture and put it in a sink.
Okay, when he said that's the guy, that's what guy?
The person that he showed us the picture of.
Just a few minutes before.
Right.
Okay, then what did he do? He pulled over.
Well, we watched them go by, and they pulled up to the street that John was at the time living at, and we waited about a minute or so, and then John whipped the van around and went back in. We looked up the street, but they weren't there.
So they were not there.
No. So we drove back to where Darlene and I were staying at the Virginia apartments, and I think JC stood up most of the night talking to Dar.
What about?
He lost it. He just went totally wacko. And it was one of his weird nights. A lot of it had to do with drug deals and times and places.
Okay, guys. So we are continuing. So we ended on page, I believe that was page 13.
The end of 13, we
And
jump.
now we are going to jump to 15 because that's how the continuity of these documents. We're not trying to leave anything out. It just goes to a totally separate topic for 2 pages and it picks up on the same topic right here. Okay. So I'm MA. I'd like to take you back. Now Darlene is speaking. Now you're Darlene.
Hmm. And she was the last bit of dialogue there.
Oh, okay. I'd like to take you back.
Oh, okay.
To the point where John lost control of himself as a result of having recognized that person. And then I'd like to carefully follow and think the sequence that occurred thereafter.
You want me to start from where I saw the picture?
From the point where he showed the picture and he lost it, and then later lost control of himself.
Okay, all right. We went over to his house to feed polar bear or something. We were there to pick something up and feed polar bear. I can't remember why we went over there. When we're at his house and him and Tom were doing something in the kitchen, I came out and he was showing Tom this picture of his wallet. And he said that he had gotten into an argument over the phone bill. Then he just, he got kind of weird look and he says that dude's out to get me. And I got, what's he want for you? What's he want you for? And he goes, he's just out to get me and he's bad and stay away from him. If you ever see him, stay away from him. I go, okay. And then he took the picture and he burned it. He threw the ashes in the sink. We finished doing what we were doing and
He burned this before you drove away or after you drove away?
before we drove away, before we left the house, he burned the picture that he showed me, the newspaper clipping. He burned that. He kept the receipts or whatever it was that was from the phone bill. He put them back in his pocket. He burned up the picture. He threw that away. We got into the van. We left. We were heading over to the Virginia apartments or someplace. And anyway, we were going west, and these 3 cars come by us, and they were 2 unmarked or 2 marked with the single unmarked in the center. And the single unmarked one in the center had their lights on or something because I can remember seeing the guy in JC goes, that's the one that's trying to kill me. And I go,
He used the word kill?
yeah. He said he's after me. He wants to kill me. He's bad. He's bad. And he started shaking. And when he started shaking, he pulled the van over. Okay. Let me get a breath. And when he started shaking, he pulled the van over the side of the road. He got out, checked to make sure his gun was there, and then goes, well, I don't. And he was just by then, he was practically incoherent. And I said, God damn it, JC, you got to get a grip of yourself. You're not going to do any good if you lose it. So he kind of pulled himself together and he said, well, let's see if they're at my house. So we turned around and went, drove by, and we saw that the cars were not parked at the house. So they turned down the road that leads to his house. So if they went to, I suppose if they didn't see the van there or whatever, they just drove on. So we took and we checked to see if they were parked in front of his house. They weren't. So we turned around and we went to Virginia apartments and everybody sat around and drank some beer and got pretty messed up, pretty drunk and stuff. And from there, the rest of them went to bed and passed out.
Who else was there?
Tom and I and JC.
Just the 3 of you?
Well, we had 2 roommates, but they were already in bed.
And what are their names? Eric, you're losing it like John Carr.
Dale and Terry. They don't know anything about anything that's going on. Dale and Terry, they don't know anything about anything that's going on. We shared an apartment with them for 1 month
Okay.
and they sat up.
Do you remember their last names?
Yeah.
Can you give them to me?
See, this is kind of bad because at the time they weren't married and their folks didn't know that the guy was living there, but it was redacted and redacted.
Redacted and redacted.
Mm-hmm. And they got married the end of December. And at that time, see, they didn't know that Dale was living there. So anyway, they drank 1 or 2 beers with us, and they went to bed because they both had to work. And then it was just Tom and JC, and I sat up. And then Tom passed out, so it was just JC and I. And by then he was getting really, really messed up.
What do you mean by messed up?
Drinking, and I don't know. He went off in another room a couple of times. So I suppose he was doing some snorting or something. But he'd come back and he'd look really, really out of it. And then he just started mumbling to himself.
What was he saying?
Just mumbling. You couldn't understand. And then, when I didn't understand, he was going to announce this guy that was after him. Then he kept going. I have to protect my friends. I have to take care of this. I got to do something. I just got to take care of it because he's going to hurt a lot of people. And that was when I told him, I said, JC, what is going on? I can't help you protect anyone or yourself unless I know who's after you and why. And he would not tell me. But the more he sat there and thought about it, the weirder he got. And then he started just totally gooning out, like he was just picking things up. And that was when he went into the bathroom and tried to hang himself with an ace bandage and all kinds of crazy things.
All right.
So then,
Just a minute. Just a minute. During this period, he went to the bathroom and tried to hang himself.
with one of those stretcher ace band aids,
What did he do?
he just wrapped it around his neck and he held it up like that, like he was looking for something to tie it in onto. And there is nothing in the bathroom to tie it onto. So he came back and then he started wrapping.
You saw him do this.
Yeah.
What was the first? Was this the first time you saw any suicidal tendencies in his part?
Yes. But JC might have been weird, but he was never suicidal.
Okay. What point in time was this?
I moved into that apartment in December, so it was the month of December.
Of 77 or 76?
6.
1976.
Yeah. It was the summer after everybody had gotten busted.
Okay, so we went from page 17. Again, there was another continuity break. So we are starting here with MA on page 19. And again, we're not trying to keep anything away from you. We want you to read those pages. They just don't have anything to do with our discussion here. I edited this all out for continuity. MA. Was it common for him to have periods of lucidity and then soon thereafter just go out of control while not on drugs?
Well, see,
You're Tom now.
the guy was doing so many drugs, he didn't know when he was on and when he wasn't. I think he was on them all the time. To tell you the honest truth, I don't think he had a day where he wasn't doing some type of drug, because towards the last, it seemed like every time I saw him, he was messed up on something, alcohol or something. I don't know what.
Did the name Steven ever come up again with this, or ever come up with this person? With this person that Carr claims to have been the one who's after him?
I can't say for sure, but it seems that he popped up somewhere. It might have been in the conversation that night. It might have been that night. I can't remember.
You never heard John Carr. Did you ever hear John Carr mention the name Steven?
Yes, more than once. But the thing is, we also knew another Steve that's local.
That's not the same person you saw duck under the lights.
No, that's a different person.
Into the shadow, rather.
But we both know another Steve. We have another Steve that's in, so sometimes he'd mention a Steve, and I didn't know who he was talking about. Then this person was hanging over at our house quite a bit then, because his best friend had just been killed in a car accident. So he was coming over days to spend a lot of time because he was kind of into his it was his best friend, and he was very depressed and upset about it. So he'd come over and talk a lot also. So when JC did mention Steve, I just thought he was talking about this Steve that lost his friend through a car accident because he was hanging around the apartment a lot at the same time.
All right, Tom, I'd like to go back to the point where we were discussing the incident about the picture. Okay, we've gone through that. Was there any other time that John Carr indicated that someone was after him?
All the time. He was paranoid. He was always talking about Carr following him.
Cars?
Cars.
Automobiles?
Automobiles. Automobiles, yeah. He was always talking about people following him, seeing the same car over and over and over again, all night long, and stuff like this. He was paranoid to the max. I mean, you couldn't get any more paranoid than that guy was. I think he was doing crystal and all the time just to stay awake so he wouldn't go to sleep and get blowed away or whatever,
Did he ever mention anyone from New York that may be after him?
Not that I remember. Not He didn't come right out and say, yeah, this guy's from New York and he's after me. He never said anything like that.
Did Phil Falcon ever mention the name Steven or refer to the person you saw there on 3 occasions?
Not that I can remember, no. See, it's hard to say because he also knew other Steves that we knew.
But did Phil Falcon ever refer to the person that you saw with John Carr?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you ever see Phil Falcon speak to him?
No, I never did.
Well, Eric, you deserve a YouTube prize for that. That was fantastic. And of course, everybody in the chat really, really loved it.
I corpsed twice, but when he said Maury Terry was an asshole,
He's great.
I couldn't help it. You know people and you hear them talking about that historically, you just can't help laughing.
I know. Well, listen, I'm glad that we did this actually, because there's a lot of things that I missed myself, even though I'm a very, very careful reader. There was a lot of things that I missed myself, but all right, so first things first, I want people in the audience to call in and tell us your thoughts on this.
But there's even Jeff. Who's Jeff?
Well, let me have your initial thoughts. I don't want to prejudice you. Let me have your thoughts on what we just read vis-a-vis, and always relate it back to what Maury Terry wrote in The Ultimate Evil.
Me? Or
yeah, I want your opinion.
Okay. No, I haven't read the book in years, and
do you want me to get back the passages?
No, don't worry. The thing I first realized is that it's known to Michael Armienti that this Thomas Taylor, wants to give a testimony. He wants to give information. That is at the very beginning.
Right.
That he wants to give the information. So why does he want to give the information? It's as if he's volunteering, saying, sure, I'll speak about this. Second, Darlene is not as stupid a nitwit as maybe later on Tom might say she doesn't have much of a mind. Because if you go through this, she's really detailed and speaking very well. She doesn't do a lot of hemming and hawing the way Tom sometimes does.
True, but they contradict each other like crazy, actually, in a few ways. But what do you have any other any other opinions on just what we
No,
read?
it just came out subconsciously that I said drinking instead of driving, because I met types like these in Maine. All they do is drink morning, noon, and night, even if they're good people.
Right, right. It's true. Well, let me give my initial thoughts on this, and maybe you can comment, Eric. And please, if anybody wants to join the discussion, hey, especially critics, right? People who believe that these say that they absolutely prove that Reeve Rockman existed. Please call in. It's in the chat.
You don't want me to bring up the Chinotti thing. We've already done that.
No, no, no. I want to relate it to Reeve and this. So I have a whole mess of issues that are raised for me that I already I have enumerated, and we're gonna deal with in a second. But initially, on first thought, in no way, shape, or form did they say that this guy Reeve Rockman or Steve was. First of all, they didn't even say he was from Queens. There's no way that we can even glean from this, in my opinion, that they actually saw a guy from Queens, because one guy is saying, Tom is saying, I don't remember, I can't remember this, I don't remember that. He might have been introduced to me, I don't remember. You can't rely on Tom's memory in this for anything. And regarding the whole issue of the burning of the picture, I got no impression from reading this that it was a picture of Reeve Rockman or Steve. I got an impression that it was a picture of a guy from a newspaper, and we'll talk about that, from a North Dakota newspaper, no less, and it was dealing with drugs. And then, of course, we have the issue of John being paranoid. So, in fact, let's actually go through these issues, because I think that
the time in the questioning and answering about the picture, we don't learn about the picture till after the fact. It's not in sequence.
Right, right. So let's deal with some issues.
Because it says he took the picture out and they're in the car, but then they say no, he burnt.
Oh, there were continuity issues there. Yeah, Tom said that he showed the picture after the police incident, after the 3 police cars drove by and it was all over. That's when Tom said he pulled the picture out. Darlene said that he pulled the picture out before they left the house, and then the police incident happened. So there's a major contradiction right there. But here's the issues. So those are. Go ahead.
One other point that think about why it's specifically Queens County that goes to investigate.
Well, because Queens was the one that Maury Terry went to.
I guess because Santucci never believed that there was one killer.
Well, I think that I think that Maury Terry brought him compelling evidence, right? That he was mistaken about, but I think it was compelling. Just think about how many people were fooled by the ultimate evil, right? So I think that he brought Santucci a compelling story that Santucci, being a responsible law enforcement officer, had to follow up on, but he didn't send out his best. He sent out a very low level, not even a lawyer. And in my opinion, Santucci was also, and this is based on your brilliant thoughts, Eric. In my opinion, Santucci was playing a double game here. He was also out there investigating Maury and Chinotti.
Specifically
Chinotti, right? Exactly.
I cross-referred to before Hank knew Maury, the warning he got about how he was disturbing everything.
You want to tell that story very briefly? You want to tell that story to the audience again?
Yeah, I said it twice before. Before Hank Chinotti, homicide detective, most highly youngest awarded. He's still a homicide detective. He gets a call from an ex-fellow detective or police officer who was close to him. And he had gone with the mafia, but they remained true to old school ties. And he gets in touch with Hank, and he says, Hank, you know, this case, they know you're investigating it also on your own. Nothing illegal yet, but the way he's doing it, he's disturbing people. He's disturbing the powers that be. They're out to get you, Hank. They want to get you. The underworld has this information. This guy, and he says, I'm telling you, Hank, you're not going to hear from me again, but they're out to get you, Hank. And Hank knew it was so true that he even hit his mother. We don't know where. And that is the beginning of he started to become circumspect in life about this whole case, even before they got him down to a cop on the beat. And before he met Maury.
A very interesting backstory to this.
I believe Maury Terry was getting information from Hank, not that Hank was using Terry.
Right, and unfortunately, I'm not sure we'll ever really get the story from Hank because, you know, he's getting on in years, and I'm not sure that he's even really gonna be willing to talk if he can even, you know, remember lucidly what happened back then.
Mhm.
But, we got Jim Fay in the in here now. Jim, here we go. Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Hello.
Hey,
Hi,
whoa.
How's
Jim,
my audio? All right.
well, you got the Blue Yeti microphone, so your audio is amazing. And not only that, but look at that setup you have there, man. What a monster I created. You-
It's very true.
Jim, what's up? How you doing?
Okay. I just wanted to bring out a couple of things that during your
Reenactment.
reenactment, that was the word I was looking for. I looked up online. I did a search of Manny and Son of Sam and another word, Terry, and I came up with a website that has the ultimate evil in sections. And the only point I wanted to bring out on that was that in Maury's book, he identifies Manny as an ADA, an assistant district attorney,
Oh
and that
my God.
he did go out there with a detective investigator, and he names him, but I forget the name as I sit here, from the DA's office. It's an interesting thing to keep in mind that in the district attorney's office in New York City, they have a NYPD squad assigned to the office, but the DAs also have their own detective investigators that report to the DA, whereas the NYPD squad ultimately reports to the NYPD.
Right.
And so, according to Terry, he didn't. Santucci didn't want to send the NYPD squad out there because of this conflict about whether to shut down the investigation or to keep it going as Santucci wanted to do it. So he picked Armetti, who is identified as an assistant district attorney and the detective investigator.
So, all right. So there's two issues there. One, Armienti identifies himself as a CLI here, not an
I have
ADA.
no idea what that is, and I have no reason to think why he would do that.
Well, the CLI, when I called, it's interesting what you're saying, Jim, because I have a question to ask. I'd like what you think. CLI, when I called the Queens County District Attorney, they kept insisting, we don't know what CLI means.
I don't think anybody else does either.
They said, we know what CLA means, a certified legal assistant, someone who's studying to get a law degree, who is permitted to work with the county and do certain types of inquiries and, you know, paperwork.
Yeah.
And Eustace said to me, if I find out what CLI is, I'll tell you and you tell me, but we know only CLA.
Is it
Now,
possible that they just screwed up in the transcript? Because someone did type this from a tape recording. Maybe I sounds like A, and he did write
Well,
this is
so
CLA.
I is up on the toward the top second row right to the right. A is way at the left in the middle row. I think it might have been a title that they no longer use. But Jim, could it be possible that Armienti went out there more than once?
Oh, he definitely did. They say that in the. I'm sorry, Jim. I answered that. But
oh, okay. I didn't know the answer anyway.
yeah, and if you read this transcript in full, all 49, 50 pages of it, they allude to when Armienti was there before, because they say you put that in our head when you were here before.
Oh yeah. That's the last time somebody just
Right.
said
It was
criminal
about.
legal investigator. But
Well, that's
but
CL.
Hold on, let Jim talk.
The CLA title that Eric mentions, that's still in use today. That's a title that as Eric said, and that's why when you called the DA's office, they said, "Yeah, we know what a CLA is because it's and we use it." But the CLI thing that threw me all off. So just out of curiosity, I did that search and came up with Terry saying, and it sounds reasonable to me, that Amenti went out as an ADA and he took a detective investigator with him. The other thing
How come
about
there's no record of that in the transcript?
yeah,
I'm not
well,
asking you that, but
yeah,
there's no other person in the transcript asking questions.
that's a very good point too, because uh, again, if it was a more formal statement to be used at a later date, everybody in the room, even if somebody was there holding another guy's coat, they'd want to know who was there.
Right.
So which is and why they didn't mention the detective investigator, I'm not sure. So the other thing
Maybe
is,
Maury made that up
uh,
in the book.
well, he mentions well, I'll call him a DI because that's what the detective. He mentions his name a couple of times in the book, so
Okay.
it wasn't like a one shot there. The other thing is, at the very beginning of the introductions, it says after he identifies himself, he says, "With me for purposes of voice identification." So there must have been a voice recording of this. How I missed that,
Right.
I don't know,
Right.
but there must have been a voice recording of this.
He's taping them.
Right.
What was that?
They're being, I
They're
believe,
being taped.
they're
Yes.
being taped.
So that was the other thing.
Yeah,
And
with me for purposes of voice identification.
Right.
sure.
And Jim, what was the last thing?
Well, reading the section that I found online of Ultimate Evil, to show that how Terry was seen to be bouncing all over the place. He interviewed somebody about Untermeyer Park, about the devil worshipping and everything like that. And I forget who it was. It was a cop or
It was a 15-year-old teenager.
well, I don't think I got the link here. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
What he says, well, there's no, so Terry asked him, in so many words, do you think Berkowitz was involved in it? He says, well, there's no evidence that there is, but there's no evidence to rule it out either, which,
Yeah, I can say that about everything.
yeah,
I mean,
right.
yeah.
But it shows the mindset that Maury Terry was in, that he had to continue this. He had to keep it going by taking things, I won't say out of context, but adding things to it.
Correct.
Other than Lieutenant Gardner of the Sheriff's Department of Minot and Detective Knoppel Knut, he does say that from New York there was another guy, but he doesn't know who the other guy is.
Yeah, he said it was like a young teenager
Young
that was with Maury.
Second,
Maury.
Yeah.
yeah, here. And then Dave Moth said page 325 is where Armienti's mentioned. I went to 325 of the first edition. He's not there.
It doesn't mean anything. He meant the later edition, which probably has different page numbers.
That's what I was about to say.
Right.
What Jim found. That's the later edition. So this takes me back to my original questioning. When was this known by Terry, this documentation and them going out there?
I think he knew about this right from the start because he was intimately involved with all this stuff.
Yeah, well, that section that I just read brings that out also. He also brings out another point in the book, which now means something to me. There was a guy by the name of Joe Coffey who was a sergeant in the NYPD. He was on television,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he liked to see
He
his.
was on WNEW.
Yeah, well, he was in a lot of things too. He was very outspoken, liked to talk, liked to see himself on. But he's supposed to be a pretty good cop. And he went to Santucci and said, if you open this case up, he says, you're not getting any help from the NYPD. You're on your own, which goes back to what I said before, that Santucci did not want to send the NYPD squad.
Right.
He wanted to send his own detectives. Coffey at the time was a sergeant in the Omega Squad, which may have been the original name of the 44 caliber killer squad before Son of Sam was
right. Yeah,
known.
Coffey was a big personality in the Son of Sam.
I knew him transcendentally, seeing him around when I was in the DA's office. I used to have contact with him.
I heard he was somewhat of a blowhard. I heard that he put the cigar in Carmine Galante's mouth as a photo prop.
I had heard that too. I wouldn't be surprised.
All right, so we got quite a bit left to go, so I want to carry on with the show. Jim, do you have anything else to add? That was great.
That's about it, really, on this particular.
Jim, you have the documents. You have these documents too.
Yes, I do have a copy of it. Yes.
6 is where they speak of the younger guy with Hank and Maury.
Yeah, I might have mischaracterized that. They said younger guy. It wasn't necessarily a teenager. So I don't want anyone to say, because someone said, what is Maury doing flying around with a teenager? I don't want to be responsible for people thinking Maury was a pedophile. So pederast.
Well, actually, now you bring that up, in the section that I just read, somebody, a boss in the NYPD, was behind his back was calling Maury Terry words to the effect of that. You know?
An FAG, yeah. But
Yeah,
I
right.
think they were just angry at the guy. I will say that in Joyce, there's a book called What Lisa Knew by Joyce Johnson, I think, about the Lisa Steinberg case, and Maury Terry's all in that. And she writes that Maury would always come to the trial, the Steinberg trial, with an attractive female that was always in a short mini skirt. So I don't know who that was either. So I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Let's get off Terry and let's get back
Yeah,
to the
right.
issues.
Well,
All right,
anyway,
Jim.
I just wanted to bring those updates out.
That was
I
great.
overlooked.
Excellent insight. And Jim, we have a show, hopefully, that you, me, and John are, that we got to schedule up soon.
Very good.
All right, my friend. Thanks.
Be in touch.
We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Sorry, Jim, I cut you off there. All right. So anyhow, issues. Okay. Yes, I have heard that Maury Terry was in the limousine that picked up Joel when he was released from prison. I have heard that from several people, insiders who knew these things, which is crazy if you think about it. And also Maury lied about that, because in his article, Joel Steinberg's version, he writes that the first time he ever saw him was at Rikers Island. So that would be another lie. All right. So my first problem with the whole Reeve Rockman story is the pseudonym, right? In the book, it says here that Gardner, the cop out in North Dakota, said that he put in a Rockman is going to kill him. But if this is a pseudonym and his name wasn't Rockman, why would Gardner think that a Rockman is going to kill him? That makes absolutely no sense to me. And it never made sense to me, even when I read the book the first time.
And but maybe Gardner, he's out west. He would have said, yeah, it's a rock man, like a rocker, a rock and roller.
No, but he said it's the exact same name that Maury heard in New York. That's the whole reason why Maury Terry got it. Right.
Like a Galati, a Grossman.
Right. But the guy's name isn't Rockman. It's Steve. It's not Reeve Rockman. It's Steve. I actually know the guy's name, but I'm not going to say it.
Now, Terry made up Reeve Rockman.
Yeah, he made up the pseudonym. But if you make up a pseudonym, how the hell is that pseudonym going to be told to a cop in North Dakota? It doesn't make sense. That this paragraph here from Ultimate Evil makes no logical sense whatsoever.
And yet the redacted, when I go Steve.
Right.
People may think that this Thomas had a trouble with the memory, but there are 3 redactions after the first.
That's the last name.
He's giving the full name. He knows it. He's being emphatic. Steve, John, I'm going to
yeah, but the reason he knows it, Eric, is because Chinati told it to him a couple of weeks prior when they were out investigating him. He says that in the transcript. He didn't even know the name. He had to think about it. He had to think about it for a week afterwards. He wasn't even sure when Chinati told him. So right here, this is my first problem with this. But let's get to the substance. So my
dichotomy between Terry and Chinati.
Exactly, right.
Chinati's out in the open.
And Terry isn't, exactly. So this is a problem right here, okay? Because this is a leading question. This guy's supposed to have a deformity in his hand. You should let the witness say that. I know that I'm hip to what Jim said last week, that this wasn't a transcript of court of law. This wasn't meant to be anything other than a question and answer session. But still, Armienti right here leads the question about the hand. And notice that the hand never comes up any other time. Okay? No. And it just says here, and he says here, I'm not really sure. So the hand thing, I think we can discount because it was a leading question by Armienti, and Tom wasn't even sure. That's my first. Listen, I have 100 problems with this, but I'm not
like what they used to call a chicken claw, a defective hand.
He might have, but again, there's nothing here that indicates that actually was the truth. So here's of course my second problem: witness intimidation. Maury Terry is getting up and yelling at this guy and saying, "What would you do if I told you that I had talked to Berkowitz and Berkowitz mentioned your name and said that he knew you?" That's Maury Terry. And then he said, and then he gets up and stands out of his chair. And then Mike stands up. So he has Mike Knoop and Maury Terry, 2 big guys, putting words in his mouth, telling him what he's supposed to think and then getting up and intimidating him. I think that that is absolutely one of the most inappropriate things I've ever read. And just that alone makes me think that Maury Terry was an absolute hack. He was going for a story and he was going to get it no matter what.
The impression I got, though, was didn't Detective Knoop get up to maybe stand between them?
Or it didn't say that. It's because Tom Taylor goes, Mike Knoop, he's not a midget either. So the way that Mike Knoop understood that was that Knoop got up to get into to use Lazarus's thing.
Knoop can clarify this. He's still alive, because I got the impression, I'm not saying you're wrong, that a detective, maybe I'm naive, a law enforcement officer would get up to say, hey, let's hold on now.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Tom Taylor is saying it. He's not a midget either.
Yeah.
So he felt threatened by the guy. And this, from what I'm gleaning from this, Tom Taylor is saying is intimating that he was threatened because he said he's not a midget either.
Yeah.
He didn't say, oh no, he got up to calm Terry down. He just said he got up and stood up and he wasn't a midget either.
But you see, out of the clear blue sky, Terry said it means that when Terry was there discussing with Thomas Taylor, that Berkowitz already was in a discussion before that.
Not necessarily. This could have been because Berkowitz, he would have had told him.
I told you that Berkowitz said he knew you. So we don't have the transcript of what took place with Terry and Detective Knoop as to exactly what was said about Berkowitz.
And we also don't have the transcript of Berkowitz actually saying that he knew him either. Remember the famous 1993 interview where Maury Terry gave Berkowitz all his answers. And then, of course, we have the evidence from Jim Rothstein that Rothstein gave those names of London, Ben Rose to Berkowitz. And Berkowitz just said, yeah, I know all those guys, when there's no way he could have known those guys.
No, wait, Rothstein didn't
remember in our thing,
gave them to Berkowitz.
No, Rothstein gave those names to Terry. Terry gave those names to Berkowitz, and then Berkowitz said, yeah, I know all of them. So and there's no way Berkowitz knew Steve London or Ben Rose. There's just no way. There's just no way in hell or on earth. I'm sorry, I'm never going to believe that.
I want to clarify. Rothstein did not give the names to say these are names Berkowitz knew.
Correct.
That's Terry who induced that. Not
exactly. Rothstein. So Terry is a known inducer. He leads people. He gives them answers. And here he is doing it, but with the added benefit of intimidating the witness, getting up and standing up in front of his face. I mean, that's not cool.
What he reminds me of is Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio. An actor shows up 3 times and then leaves, but he puts down that they were part of the studio. Terry gets names of criminals from Rothstein, and he incorporates them in the Son of Sam case.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if Rothstein even knows how Maury Terry, in a sense, kind of betrayed him by making him look ridiculous, in my opinion.
I don't think he can make Rothstein look ridiculous unless somebody wants to, because if you notice, Rothstein's one of the few people about whatever he was involved with who talks unabashedly. In fact, he said, play everything you've recorded with me, Eric. If you wanted to play all those 5 tapes that you edited down to 1, he wants that. He doesn't want anything edited. Do what you want, as long as it's the truth.
The only reason, sorry, I just forgot my thing. I'm just reading Lazarus. No, Lazarus, I don't even know what you're talking about here. I saw one of your things earlier in the chat and I just misread it. So
Manny, I want to get back to what he says, supposing I told you that David Berkowitz mentioned you.
Yeah.
In that quote of that part of the conversation by Thomas Taylor, before Terry says that, he doesn't pull Berkowitz out of his hat like a rabbit. Berkowitz is being discussed before he says, supposing I told you he knew you. So there's something that Taylor was saying about maybe I don't recognize Berkowitz, I don't know this, and then Terry gets up and says, supposing I told you he knew you and named you.
This is a very, very good point. Well, I didn't, I'm not saying that actually happened because we can't say that for sure.
Throwing it forth for everybody to think about.
But you are bringing up a great point, because it would tend to follow that they were talking about that. And then he said, yeah, because why would he just bring that up out of the blue? Yeah, it kind of makes sense what you're saying. But yet again, we are speculating on that.
Terry to get up and go after him, and possibly also Detective Knoop, possibly. It means that Terry was sitting there getting frustrated with the answers he was receiving from Thomas Taylor.
Right.
He
Which
wasn't
meant that
getting what
it
he
wasn't
wanted to
it
hear.
wasn't what he wanted to hear. Exactly. And when Maury doesn't get what he wants to hear, he just simply makes it up. Oh, all right. Here's my next issue. Was this even a newspaper clipping of Reeve Rockman? It says here he was going to go, and he showed me a newspaper clipping. I believe Darlene was there. I'm not sure, and he was scared. He showed me a newspaper clipping and a telephone receipt. Now, my question is, why would Reeve Rockman, an accountant from Queens, be in a newspaper clipping from a newspaper in North Dakota, right? Because the newspaper was in North Dakota. It said, Tom said, I keep thinking the Grand Forks. And then Armenti says, wait, North Dakota? And then Tom says, right. So why would Reeve Rockman, an accountant from Queens, be in a North Dakota newspaper about a drug bust? I mean, can someone answer me that question logically?
In other words,
Steve, right. Why would Steve from Queens, who goes by Reeve Rockman in The Ultimate Evil, and remember, Reeve Rockman is the head of the cult, according to Maury Terry. Reeve Rockman is one of the heads of this cult, so-called cult, the Son of Sam cult. Yes. Why would Reeve Rockman, an accountant from Queens, be involved in a drug bust newspaper article from Grand Forks, North Dakota? It doesn't make any sense. There's no way in hell, especially in the 70s, that is within the realm of possibility.
Did anybody give a description? Oh, I'm sorry, Manny. Finish.
No, this newspaper clipping was clearly from North Dakota. It was about a drug bust that had nothing whatsoever to do with accounting or Reeve Rockman. And in my opinion, as we're seeing here, John Carr was a total paranoid schizophrenic, druggy up the ass. He was thinking that that police cars were following him when they weren't. He was seeing this guy Reeve Rockman, Steve from Queens, the accountant from Queens, driving a police car to his house. This does not make any logical sense. This is the ravings of a lunatic with an article from North Dakota in his wallet. And that article is about a bust, a drug bust. Tom says it, right? He says it was an article about a bust. It had nothing to do whatsoever with Reeve Rockman or Steve, an accountant from Queens. And also, why would let's just say it was the picture of Reeve Rockman, an accountant from Queens, in a newspaper article about a drug bust in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Why would he be in that article? Right? Why would Reeve Rockman even be in a newspaper article to begin with? It doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, we have John Carr's mental state, totally paranoid, totally schizophrenic, suicidal. He was trying to hang himself. And those are, I mean, and then, of course, we have this issue of the local Steve. These guys, sorry, Eric, go ahead. I'm just getting I'm getting too pissed off here.
No. You're great. Nobody feels any anger. You're hot on the trail. Darlene says that there are Darlene Christian, right? You said her name was Christensen,
right?
She says that we knew a lot of Steves,
right? We knew a lot of Steves. He could have been talking. It says here we more than once. But the thing is, we knew another Steve that's local.
Yeah, and
then we knew another Steve, and JC knew Steve, and we always thought he was talking about Steve.
Well, this guy Steve, I picture his body language. He seems to be very laid back.
Right.
Doesn't want to be up front. So let's assume that that's Reeve Rockman. That could be the reason why he's laid back. Is he out there because of the drug trafficking that we know John Carr did, as we'll see later on?
But then we have the issue with this Steve character leaving John Carr's house with 4 other people and not even saying goodbye to anybody, not saying goodbye to his friend John Carr. I mean, why would John Carr be hanging out with a guy who wants to kill him?
Well, we don't know if it's Rockman Steve or Reeve.
Right. Well, that's the whole point, Eric. We don't know.
We don't know who was out to kill him.
But we don't know who was out in North Dakota. But Maury Terry, and I'm going to bring us back to that page, okay? While I speak to you guys, Maury Terry in The Ultimate Evil says, right here, Rockman, a mystery was observed at the Falcon's Nest. he was introduced unequivocally as Reeve, John's friend from New York, and they understood that Rockman was involved in drug dealings. I didn't get that from these documents. And then it says here, Carr carried a photo of Rockman. This is the guy who wants to kill me. John burned the picture. This is what we just dealt with for the last hour. It said nothing of the sort of what we just read.
Right, but that could be coming from other interviews that took place with Terry there at that time when he got up and say, supposing I told you David Berkowitz said he knew you.
It could have, but listen, we have the words in The Ultimate Evil and we have the transcript from North Dakota.
Yeah, I'm not going against. I'm just...
No, of course, but the two don't mix. The two don't mesh.
No, but there's another thing about John Carr. If you study people with paranoia, which is fear, there's a process. They go into an abyss that never stops getting darker and darker and larger. There is something that initially, even beyond drugs, that frightened Carr. So he's frightened. He takes drugs, but then he takes more drugs, and it worsens the paranoia. So excessive drug use and the excessive paranoia is only a protraction of an initial stage of paranoia, not as bad as Darlene and Thomas experienced.
Right. Yeah, he was just messed up, man. You know, part of me was thinking, well, what if that was a picture of David Berkowitz he was carrying in his wallet? And before anybody gets too excited that they knew each other, it could have been post-arrest. And then all of a sudden his father was being brought into this, and his sister was being brought into this, and the Carr family was getting notoriety. What if that was a picture of a bust of David Berkowitz, and he thought that David Berkowitz was out to kill him because Berkowitz was writing his name in the Son of Sam letters, and Berkowitz was writing them letters about how I want to kill you and to his father. Now, the only way that would work is if the dates line up, and we have to, and because it said that this was 76, but these two people, Tom and Christian, Tom and Darlene, they don't know their asses from their elbows, and they even admit it in terms of dates and names and places.
They're very honest.
They are.
I can't recall. I don't know.
Right.
So you have to ask, why is Armienti focusing on them?
On who?
On Thomas and Darlene.
Because they're the ones that supposedly said that this Reeve Rockman, Steve, was out there. The accountant from Queens, the leader of the Son of Sam cult, was hanging out in North Dakota. Even though from what we just read, Steve could have been local. This was all about a drug deal, and John wasn't paranoid about a guy from Queens. He was saying it was a local narc driving a police car going to his house. It had nothing to do with Reeve Rockman whatsoever. This Reeve Rockman is a joke. I think I just debunked it.
Yeah, you see, the thing that's tragic, if you've ever gone out to certain areas of rural America, I knew it in Maine, a great tragedy about this country, and I saw it develop in England, is that there's so many areas of America where part of one's daily life is the adventure is not discovering a new land, but it's just drugs and alcohol all the time.
Yeah.
It's horrible. There are entire towns in America where the poverty is the poverty of the mind and the soul. They're just taking drugs and alcohol all the time. I get that feeling when I read this.
Yeah, and listen, brought to us, of course, by the U.S. government, the CIA.
You have to remember that just like a recording studio, the recording industry or Hollywood studios, people are going to say, hey, you're unpatriotic. What are you talking about? The armed forces are viaducts also for drugs.
Oh, of course.
We have going back to World War I. I did a murder investigation after the Korean War. There was so many dope fiends that came back and were robbing, especially down south, many physicians who were carrying guns. It's rife with it, you know. But I think Carr had a legitimate reason to be afraid. That's my opinion.
Definitely.
Carr had a legitimate reason to be afraid. And for now, I do agree with Cinotti's analysis about Carr being murdered, where they demonstrate how in the way they fell, he was murdered. But there's too much that's missing from these, even from these. There's too much missing from these North Dakota documents. And why did he choose the name Reeve?
That's a great question. I have no idea, but even the pseudonym, like I said, makes no sense because Gardner out there in North Dakota is saying, yeah, I got a Rockman out here. I thought it was a Rockman. He's using the fake pseudonym that Maury came up with. It makes no sense. Doesn't
Yeah.
even make logical sense. Anyway, Eric, we're getting on an hour and 50 minutes. I'm getting a little tired. Um, this was an
Anybody else
excellent.
come in?
Well, I tried. I want my critics to call in. I always say to them, "Hey, you got such big mouths online. Why don't you call and debate me on the air?" And I always notice that none of them do. Now I know they're all watching right now.
I'm making an appeal to my friend. I won't name her. Please try and get me Mike Knope, please.
Right? Yeah.
Man shouldn't want to talk. He's the only one of those law enforcement officers out there who's alive. We don't want to attack him. We
want answers.
We're thinking of the people murdered and every other heinous crime.
Right. We want to know the inside story. What happened when Maury Terry got out there? Because to me, it sounds like Maury Terry got out there and threw his weight around and left North Dakota with the story that he wanted to hear in his own head. But the story that actually occurred left behind on the pages of these transcripts tells to me an entirely different story. There's no way in hell, as an honest person and as a person who is open to information, that I can come out of reading these documents thinking that the Reeve Rockman story was proven. I'm sorry. And if you don't disagree with me, that's fine. We can have the debate. But come to me with evidence. I noticed that none of my very vocal online critics have called in today. I'd be very nice to you. You don't have to worry about me. I don't bite.
There's no definitive proof. Nothing definitive. But it takes me back to my initial questions. When did Terry come across the Armenti documents? He's not in the first edition. So we know now that he's in the second. What made him put him in the second edition?
Well, also, what made him put him in there if it's so completely misinterpreted? That's my question. And I think it goes back to what my friend told me from the publishing industry, that Maury's initial transcript was rejected. They told him, come back with something sexier. And then the next thing they know, all this North Dakota process, Manson stuff is in it. And that's when the wheels fell off. Anyway, Eric, any last words for the audience?
No, just help us out. It's not just us, but and let's be united. But at the other end of the spectrum, I wish I could know more about Thomas Taylor. He's younger than I am, and Darlene Christensen, because they are willing to offer information.
That's right. Exactly. I mean, who knows if they're still alive? If they were that big on drugs, probably they're both dead now, but we don't know. Yeah. And Betty S said something very important. Betty S said something very important. Sounded like the guy was, I think she meant to write schizophrenic. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He was thinking that cars were following him that weren't following him. That sounds like my friend Mike, back when we were 19, 20 years old, going to see a Japanese animation film. He leaves in the middle, and the next thing we know, he's saying, hey, that plane, that movie was written for me. That plane is following me. That helicopter, you see it up there, it's fine. And the next day he was institutionalized. It sounds exactly like John Carr.
I'll just say this sentence here that Armenti said, that I give credit to Thomas and Darlene. I understand you want to make a statement. He's already foretold that they make a statement. So that I overlooked. That could be a hint as to who brought him out there. They're saying we want to make a statement. How did they hear that he wanted to make a statement?
Right. Yeah. I mean, all great questions, and hopefully we will continue this this investigation into these North Dakota documents, because not only am I interested in reading them and analyzing them for myself, for Eric, and of course for you guys out in the audience, but I am now interested in the backstory of these. So I want as much information as possible. If anybody can get us Knope or Gardner, whoever's still alive in North Dakota, hey, we're open to you. Come on board, be our friend, and we'll all have a fun time together. So, Eric, I'm going to take you off. Say goodbye, please.
God bless you all. Stay well.
Thanks, Eric. Please stick around so we can say goodbye off the air. And my friends, I want to say thank you so much. I was really, really looking forward to this all week long. I totally am so appreciative of you hanging with us for almost 2 hours while we went through this. I really do believe at the end of the day that we're just trying to find the truth here. Okay. That's all we want. And I think that we're a little closer now. And of course, all of this was, again, kept from me for the last few months by the people over at the Maury Terry official Facebook page who need to be publicly called out for being enemies of Son of Sam Truth. Plain and simple. So listen, guys, a lot of exciting stuff is coming up. This weekend, I got a brand new walk and talk coming with the legendary, with the great, with the veteran Mike Lorenzo. We have an awesome, amazing walk and talk coming for you this weekend. That's going to be premiered. That's going to be live premiere. I'm going to be there in the chat. And Mike is going to also give his opinions. We're going to have a very extensive discussion about these North Dakota documents as we do our beautiful walk and talk in an undisclosed location. So that's coming up. And also this Friday, I have a pop-up, which is going to be Did Berkowitz Write the Son of Sam Letters? This is a reprise. This is I did this already in my previous iteration as real-time true crime, but I'm doing it again, and I'm going to do it better. So we're going to have an awesome time on Friday night. We're going to all party. It's just going to be a grand old time. Hope that you guys call in. And that's basically all I have to say, guys. So listen, we're back and we're not fucking around. All right. So with that, I will say good night, everybody. We'll see you next time.